Hi, kia ora, and welcome to Creative Connections, where we have beautiful, inspiring conversations with artists living in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Mandy Jakich. Ceara Lile is a fibre-based mixed media artist who grew up in West Auckland and is now living in Keri Keri in the far north of Aotearoa, New Zealand. She creates abstract textile collages layered with meaning, memory and emotion, as well as inkless hand-printed fabrics. From an early age, Caera has been captivated by textiles, drawn to their textures and versatility. Her work takes the form of abstract collage-based fibre sketches, where these materials serve as both her medium and her tool. Caera creates layered backdrops using these elements to build a rich foundation. Then she draws over them, playing with colour and form to evoke places, emotions and relationships. I loved meeting and talking to Caera. She shares how she got back to creating after a breakaway travelling after completing a fashion degree. We discuss how her love of maths and her fashion degree has informed her work, the process of abstract art and how abstract works often have a teenage stage before reaching a satisfying completion, and the mathematical problem solving that is often part of the abstract process. Caera goes into fascinating detail about her inkless printing process, from collecting rusty iron and bark and creating pigments, to how she chooses the leaves and how each leaf responds to the dyeing process. We also talk about her two other series, Changing Landscapes and The Ven of Us, which are fabric collages using repeated shapes and hand-stitched lines. Caera explains the ideas and the meanings of the codes that appear on her fabric collage works. We go to the craft versus art conundrum and her shifting attitude of it's just clothes to seeing her work as art and herself as an artist. And of course, so much more. Ngā mihi, thank you so much to Caera for such an informative, lovely chat. I learnt a lot and I'm sure you will too. Caera's practice is very inspiring. And thank you to you for tuning in and joining us today and for supporting Creative Connections. Kia ora, Caera.
Hello.
It's lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you again.
We had a little chat earlier via Zoom, like a week ago, wasn't it? Or 2 weeks ago, which was nice. Nice to have that little intro. I can't believe that time has already gone, actually. It's crazy. So I approached you a while ago just because I found your practice really fascinating, and I kind of love stitch works myself, and I just was really drawn to your practice. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about it. Welcome to Creative Connections.
Thank you. It's an honour to be asked and to be invited.
Lovely. Okay, so you are at the moment living in Keri Keri, but you've had just moved to the far north from Featherston, which is very exciting. And you've got a new house, new studio. Your partner's got a studio as well. So it sounds like a perfect scenario for you. So can you tell us a little bit about the shift up to the far north?
Well, my partner is originally from Slovakia and I'm a Westie, West Aucklander, born and bred. And when we met, and decided to live in New Zealand, we swore that we would never be landlocked because his home country is landlocked. And so we'd always feel like we live on an island. And it was great. We came back 17 years ago, lived a year in Nelson, and then we went to Wellington for about 9-ish years. And then we moved to Featherston in South Wairarapa, and it's landlocked. So we started feeling like maybe we're not in the New Zealand we wanted to live in anymore. We needed to start embracing the island vibes, and I've always had a pull to the north. My grandparents used to live in Manganui, and I just love it up this way. So now we got to move up here. It's been a bit challenging at times because we never really do things by halves. We jump in and try and get it done by yesterday. And if things aren't being done by yesterday, we get really frustrated with ourselves. And so we moved in April. And I feel like now in the last month or so, just since about August, started feeling like I'm finding my footing here and relaxing into it, and I can enjoy my studio, and I'm feeling less stressed about having to create art and having to do it when you just don't want to, because moving was it just took all our energy trying to fit into here and make it fit us. Yeah.
I bet. It's so exhausting. I think moving house is one of the most exhausting things you can ever do.
Yeah. When you move into your first house, I think then you start really realizing that you have a place that you can start accumulating life and things. And so moving from there to another, there's so much more stuff.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of the move for me has been just editing out, getting rid of stuff, and just keeping the things that are really precious and useful.
Yeah, that's such a cathartic thing to do, isn't it? And your partner, Mario, is a tattoo artist, so he's sort of working from home in another studio. So you're a very creative couple who seem to really fit together so beautifully. What I've seen on your socials, the way you present yourself anyway, it seems like that.
Yeah, we're disgustingly cute.
And you look so cute together. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We were lucky to meet each other. We say that we had to travel the world to find each other, to find someone as nutty as each other to deal with us, because we feel like if we each feel like we're quite difficult to deal with at times. And we give each other a lot of grace, and our relationship really is based on, and that's why we've been creative. Our relationship is based on the idea of, yes, let's support you to do what you want to do and grow. And if you say you want to do something, how do we do it? How do we do it? And just, yes, let's do it. And it's at the base of it is we say that there's freedom, that our relationship's about ensuring that we're each free to do what we want to do.
I love that. Yeah, so good.
And so we do some bonkers stuff at times, but yeah.
Great. Sounds amazing. It's perfect. Perfect relationship, in my opinion. So can we go back to when you were a child? You have always been captivated by textiles. So how did that all start?
I think it started from being a kid who grew up in hand-me-downs, and I never got a choice really in what I was able to wear, or my bedroom, even what it was going to look like. Often it was things that were collected or given. And I remember discovering in the garage a tea chest full of fabrics, old fabrics. And Mum just said I could go for gold and have them. I've always done things with my hands, crafted. Mum got me I remember as a toddler probably being given snips and magazines and cutting out pictures and just sticking them in on pages. And then she taught me to hand sew. And so one Christmas, the whole family got buttons attached to a bit of felt as a bookmark. I must have been 5. So I've been hand sewing and beading things, and then when I wanted to make slightly bigger things, Mum dug out my great grandmother. I think it was her hand sewing machine, a Singer sewing machine, and she didn't trust herself to teach me on an electric machine. So until I got to intermediate school and could learn that at sewing, I was making things on a little Singer sewing machine, which I love. I love the mechanical nature of it. It never gave up. It was just the best machine. And I would just make doll clothes and bags and pencil cases, and I made a pterodactyl for a science thing. All sorts of things. And just figuring out how to I love figuring out how to make a 3D shape from a 2D form. It's very engineering. I love that. Yeah.
So
So,
interesting, isn't it? That it's come all the way back from there, you know.
yeah.
And was your mum into sewing and that kind of thing as well? It's just not.
No, she's a great knitter. She's a very, very neat knitter. If you give her a pattern or a recipe she's great she can just knock it up and follow perfectly. Where I think I would have been quite difficult for her to teach because I'm the opposite. You give me a recipe, I leave out the most important ingredient.
Really?
The amount of cakes that didn't have baking powder in that I made as a kid, or you know.
And you prefer not to follow a pattern when you're sewing?
Yeah, or I make my own. I love the maths involved in making patterns. I'm quite weirdly, I suppose, an odd mix of very abstractly creative, but also very mathematical.
Yeah, that comes through your artwork hugely, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. At one point, I remember my printed pieces. Someone came into the Greytown Gallery where I had them, and I said something about math, and they said, your scarves actually look quite mathematical. And I looked at them and went, oh my gosh, they're just a bunch of line graphs.
Yeah, but also some parts of them are quite symmetrical, aren't they? And they're quite mathematical patterns. Yeah.
Lately, I've been letting nature be a bit crazy because the other stuff, the sewing things that I do, is so tight, and I get really obsessively rigid with it. So it's really nice just to go, oh, let's just see what happens with all of these leaves. And I kind of have this idea, but I'm going to be loose and just have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And your practice we'll get onto in a second, but you know, you've got the sort of, it's almost like 3 series of works. The changing landscapes, and then your ink-free printed fabrics, which are exquisite, and then your Venn of Us, or your sort of Venn diagram inspired fabric works, which again are very mathematical. It feels like you're sort of combining that kind of mathematical interest with a lot of sort of human expression. Like it's sort of a lovely balance, and it's not always a common balance, that sort of maths with that sort of much more, thinking about well-being and emotion and all those other things. You sort of combine those 2 elements of life really beautifully through your work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mario and I have talked about it since he started me developing my art, because he never used to like abstract work at all. He's a color realism tattoo artist, and so he really loves precision and the old masters and beautiful color realism work. And he couldn't understand mine, and then I said to him, yours is the way you see the world, and what you show is how you see the world. What I do is how I feel about the world. And then he kind of went, yeah, that's it. And that's the difference in our thinking and how we work with it. So, yeah, he's a lot more visual with what he sees and interpreting that. And I'm kind of, wow, what's our connection here?
Yeah. It's
and
so
how are you
interesting.
feeling about this?
And I find it so fascinating that some artists or some people are sort of just head that abstract way, and some really don't. Like it's quite a sort of, there's quite a deep divide between in a way. And it's like it's something that's in you that needs to be expressed through that particular form. Like where does that actually come from?
Yeah, and to get so excited about seeing someone else do it, you just see this an amazing abstract artwork, and it just hits you so much. And I can be standing there going, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, look at that detail and all of the layers. And look at how they've done this. This is, and they've balanced this color out over here, and get really geeky into it, because I think the abstraction as well is a real problem solving skill, and it's quite mathematical in the balance and drawing continuity through. And, if you put a little bit of color here in a small patch, then you might need to bring it down here for the continuity if you're drawing the eye through, and you're really thinking about the experience of looking at it.
Yeah.
And what looks what feels comfortable to look at or what feels uncomfortable. And I find that really fun.
Yeah, I do too. I love that way that you're sort of working, thinking it's not happening yet, and especially with composition, you're moving things around and like, yeah, no, not there yet. And then you just get to that point where you think, yeah, that's right. That's how I want it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's a good feeling. But then I guess realists, have the same feeling when they capture that exact moment that they want to capture. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it's interesting watching Mario tattoo. I know how he works through the color palette and how he works through the session. With his work as well as mine, I would say that, and I suppose most art, there's that point where you have it all planned out, and it seems really there's potential and possibility, and it's all really exciting. And then you start, and then you go, oh no, and you're moving towards it, but all of a sudden your piece turns into it's going through its 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, we've hit the teenage years here. How are we going to resolve this and help it be a grown up and get it out of this awkward phase? And you have to just keep going until you get to, there we go. We're starting to breathe again at the end. Life is becoming a bit more reasonable.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is. And sometimes with works, I guess abstract or even not abstract, you've kind of got to let them, give them a bit of space, like put them in time out or something like that, and sort of come back or just keep looking at them. And it is that analogy of the teenage years is quite true. Like it's a bit like that with your kids as well. Sometimes it's like, just go away for a minute and I'm going to gather myself, and it's just that time that you need it to reflect and to sort of observe and just to really look closely, and then you can come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it is just part of the process, particularly when I'm watching his work, because he works from dark to light, just the practicalities of working with the ink. And when you put all of the dark and the midtones in, everything kind of flattens out a bit, and you go, oh, it's a bit dark. And then it's only when you start adding or see him add all of the light tones in towards the end and the super bright tones that you realize how little of an amazing picture needs it. It's that contrast between that really uncomfortable dark that can feel like it's taking over, and those beautiful, really poppy bright tones that sit just in the, to show the, light. It's that contrast is just amazing to watch come to life at the end of the process. Yeah.
And it must be even harder for a tattooist because you're actually working on a person. So, and they're watching what you're doing all the time. I mean, it is quite a different art form in that way. That you're always somebody's watching to make sure it's okay, and must sort of get quite anxious partway through the process sometimes.
Yeah, it can be like that, but generally, he's pretty good, and you choose an artist and you trust them. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Let them do their thing. Anyway, let's get on to just talking a little bit about your story up to becoming a full-time artist and seeing yourself as an artist. So you have done a variety of things in a way. Can you talk us through how you've got to this point, and also, if you were actually making things throughout that time?
Well, my love of fabric took me all the way through high school. Interestingly, in my family, we were really encouraged to do music and academics. So I did art at school because that was my choice. It was one of my choice subjects that we were encouraged to a well-rounded curriculum and very academically driven. And I also played clarinet from, I think I was 9. And in our family, it was like the highest achievement in my family would have been to be a classical musician when I grew up. And I thought that I'd want to do that, but also be a fashion designer. And towards the end of high school, I decided to apply for fashion school instead of anything else, and gave up the music slowly towards the end of high school, and went to AUT and did a fashion degree. And then I realized afterwards I loved studying, absolutely loved studying. I'm such a geek. So I loved studying towards it. And then I ended up working as a pattern cutter. But I think the tough thing at that time, because this was in the mid to late 90s, the tariffs were lifted and the global economy really began. And so the fashion industry in New Zealand, a lot of the production started facing a huge amount of competition from overseas. And so I worked as a pattern cutter for a short while and ended up just going, oh, I'm going to do my big OE instead, and went to the UK and became a barmaid. But part of the decision not to really go back into it was because I grew up in the Waitakere Ranges and grew up hiking and loving trees, loving the environment. And it was only when I really began working in the fashion industry that the reality of it is becoming more and more disposable and kind of going against what I ethically believe in. That really hit home for me. And so I started, I suppose, trying to find other things, but I was always making little things or sewing or I suppose painting or just doing things that were creative along the way. But yeah, I ended up leaving the thing I thought I would love the most.
Yeah. And you didn't think I need to make my own sort of ethically made range, or you weren't thinking like that at that time?
I think that whole idea would have intimidated me far too much at that point. And it was still early days of the internet and sourcing things and stuff. So for me, I wouldn't have even known where to start. And so I ended up coming back to New Zealand and working as a tour guide, an eco tour guide, taking people hiking into the beach for a living.
Nice.
Which was great.
A good job. Yeah.
Yeah, it was excellent. So I took tourists out around the Waitakere Ranges every day for my job. That was lovely. And then I decided to go to teachers training college and train to be a teacher. But then I loved the training for it because I love learning. But I was the worst teacher. God, I didn't even last for August.
Really?
Yeah, it was terrible. It was not for me. I loved the learning, and I think I was just put myself in the wrong situation. And I still needed to figure out more how I best would work in the world on my own to, kind of figure out myself first before I got in a classroom full of teenagers.
Yeah, fair enough.
And particularly the subject that I was taught to teach, because I did a fashion degree, I was the soft materials technology teacher or the sewing teacher. I never took sewing at high school. I was an academic, and so I didn't quite know how to approach even teaching to those students because I was never one of them. So it was just a bit of a mismatch from the start. Yeah. I wish I could have done it better, but
yeah. Yeah, it wasn't for you.
No, and that's come in really, those skills have actually come in really well down the track anyway.
Yeah, well, that's good. You actually started making 3 or 4 years ago, was it, when you started making your scarves?
My beautiful partner, he realised that I was a frustrated creative. And we actually were running a tattoo studio together in Wellington back then. And in, I think, 2018, he saw that because I was doing the business side of everything. He was the tattoo artist. I was the business and did the marketing and all of the, I suppose, the customer experience, all that kind of stuff. That was me. And I loved doing it. But I was in every day I went to a workplace where everyone else was a creative and I was the business person. And the tattoo artists, no one except Mario realized that I actually am creative. They all thought I was just a business head, I think. That's my impression. And so I did my job really well because I understood how they thought and I could see their processes and I was really interested in it, but it wasn't fueling me. And so he bought me a day at a workshop to learn eco-printing with Birgit Moffat in Otaki. And so he said, you're not going to work that day, off you go. You're taking a day out to just play with fabric and leaves. And it was amazing.
Really?
And yeah, I just got to play with the two things I love, trees and nature and fabric.
Yeah.
What could be better? And came away with a real fire in my belly. And I just wanted to print and print and print and print and print and just experiment with it, because there's part of it that's quite, you can go down a really chemistry-driven rabbit hole, or you can just learn a little of that, but then intuitively apply it and just experiment, which I suppose I experiment and I call it more of a scientific approach rather than taking someone else's science. I play with my own science over there. And so I just play with my mordant and different mordants, and it was so much fun. And then when we decided to move to Featherston, one of the things was that I would have space to print and I would have space to be creative again. And when we moved, we realized that the house wasn't really great for that, because Mario, he loves doing up motorbikes, and he had promised me half the garage. I ended up in a tiny little corner of the garage by the garage door where all the wind came in, and so my leaves were going everywhere and pots wouldn't warm up, and everything was wrong. So when we started his tattoo studio, we found a space that in Featherston it was two shops that opened up in the middle to each other. So they were you could walk through, and we just put a barn door in the middle, and sometimes I'd just open it up and walk through and say good day to his clients and stuff, and then I'd close off and just be making things and printing. It was great.
Amazing. And that was were you doing that full time? You were devoting yourself to that practice?
Yeah. The original thought behind it was to do eco-friendly clothing. So I sourced waste fabrics and played with those and the eco-printing techniques, and then I would make the clothes, and then I'd open the shop and people would come in, and it was wonderful. But then I realized I was starting to get grumpy by people coming into my shop while I'm trying to work. And also then COVID happened, because we opened in 2020, and by 2021 things were growing, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. And so I had to think of different ways of working.
Isn't that interesting that you weren't ready for that when you were younger through fashion school time, but then you were sort of getting to that, you did get to that point where you're like, yeah, I actually want to bring this together, which is quite lovely, isn't it, that you got to that stage eventually? Yeah,
and I do workshops as well to teach people how to print, and so even the teaching came in, and it was, everything I think that I'd learned to that point was starting to come into play.
And I love the idea of the two shops next to each other, and your creative spaces alongside each other. I mean, that's beautiful.
Oh, it was lovely. Met some great people. It was just amazing. A really, really great start.
That's so good. And so that kind of marked your life as an artist, I suppose. And then, we can talk about it, but you obviously started to kind of develop that practice into other areas as well. So just the inkless printing, can you describe that to people who've never seen that work? And then we can talk about the process.
It's generally known as eco-printing or eco-dyeing. And it is a cousin of natural dyeing, traditional natural dyeing techniques. So instead of taking plant matter and cooking it down or extracting the dyes from that and then putting your fabric in it, what you do is use the same chemistry to create, instead of extracting the pigment from the leaves, into a pot, you extract it straight onto the fabric. So it's a direct transfer of the pigment and patterns onto the fabric rather than in large swathes of colour. So sometimes I'll mix both techniques, but yeah, generally I love the printing.
And so the work that you make is often on silks or silk cottons, isn't it? And you can actually see the defined shape of the leaves, which is different to that whole sort of pigment kind of coloring of fabric. And it's so beautiful and so interesting, sort of pattern wise. And then I love the way the different colors come out in sort of different strengths, and it's just got such a soft, beautiful feeling about it. Can you talk about how you actually sort of transfer the shape of the leaf onto the fabric?
Well, you just said that that you get the variations of softness of print. Sometimes things are darker, sometimes there's more or less pigment in the leaves. Where you source the leaves from, what the plant's soil chemistry is doing, the time of year, whether it is just coming into leaf, if it's deciduous, or it's got really strong chemistry in the leaves in the middle of the season. It all comes into play. So you start becoming really, really aware of your surroundings and what the trees around you are doing. So what I do, I can pre-treat fabrics with mordant. Mordant means to bite. It literally comes from the Latin to bite. So it helps the pigment be colour fast in the fabric. I loved the way that Birgit Moffat taught, and it was more about what you have around you and what's in your environment. So I collect rusty things and use vinegar, and then I will dip my leaves or I'll dip my fabric and lay them all out into the patterns that I want. Sometimes I want very intentional patterns. I've done a range of pieces that are all about the black sheep or the oddball. And so I'll have lined up all of these one type of leaf, and then I'll just have one that's a different colour hidden in there. And it'll just be a slightly different species that gives a different colour or something. And I'll lay them all out, fold and roll up my fabric into tight little bundles, and then essentially cook them.
Really?
Yes, I boil them.
That's fascinating.
And it smells amazing, especially if you've got lots of eucalyptus in your pot. It's just, it's beautiful on a good printing day.
And do you have to tie up the bundle so the leaves don't move?
Yeah. Really tight. The tighter the better. Sometimes it's actually nice to go a bit loose because then the colours will shift and bleed. But if you want a really crisp, you get a knack of being really ruthless with your twine and all sorts of different techniques to get clean prints versus shadowy ones coming through. And sometimes I'll pre-dye with. I love using cochineal. I order in the little. Sorry, vegans, I order in the bugs and grind them up and make a dye pot.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. What sort of bugs?
It's a cochineal. It's a little scale insect from Mexico.
Really?
Yeah. They grow them in a bunch of different places, really. But I get bags of cochineal. They look like they're dried when they come, and they look like these beautiful little gems. They're so gorgeous. Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting as well. And when you actually tie up your bundle, do you get the marks of the twine as well?
Sometimes I really want it, and sometimes I won't want it. It depends. If I want it, I will process my bundle in a dye bath. So then the dye will seep through in the parts that aren't tied. And if I don't want it, I will either steam or boil in clean water. Yeah. And sometimes at the moment, I've just got what's called a dirty pot going. And that is just a whole bunch of bark and leaves and metal and water in a pot that it's like a beautiful stew that just keeps giving.
That's incredible. So you're basically making a pigment of some sort, and for those ones you don't have the actual leaf shapes. Is that right?
On the inside of the bundle, you'll see the leaf shapes. and it's just at the end of the bundle that the dye will come through. So it might only be the last 20 centimetres that will have it. Almost looks like a fringe effect at the end.
I love that. And what form does the metal come in?
All sorts of rusty irony bits that I find, and lots of rusty things I find all over the place. I have to say that one of my favourite spots for finding it was out behind the Featherston railway station.
Really?
There are all sorts of beautiful clunky bits of rusting metal sitting out by the tracks there.
And so the rusty pigment just comes, sort of leaches out of the object, of the metal.
Some people actually, some people use it to print, and that's amazing. People who live on farms and things have all sorts of beautiful rusty pieces of, I suppose, nuts and bolts and things that they bundle up, and it looks amazing. I don't do that. I just use it really for the iron. And the iron for me is part of the mordant process, or the colour fixing process and colour shifting process. It makes everything slightly cooler and more purpley, and helps to make it more colour fast.
Beautiful.
So I use it for that.
It's a real science, and I can see that it's actually, your sort of academic side and your mathematical side is coming through very much through the process.
Although there is a good portion of the I can't follow a recipe to save myself side, and that anyone listening to this who's into eco printing, my terminology is probably all up the spout, and they'll be correcting me left, right, and centre. But I'm doing a thing and it works.
Yeah,
so I'm just going to keep playing.
Yeah, and that's how you like to work. You're sort of more of an organic process than a sort of step-by-step instruction.
Yeah, I like to learn the technique until it becomes somewhat intuitive, and I think that's how I learn once it becomes just a fun part of, what happens if I do this? I'll remember that for next time, whereas a lot of people will make endless notes, and that's how I probably should be doing it. But my notes are, that bit of fabric, I think I remember that I did this other thing too. Let's try again. Yeah, I'm a bit gung-ho like that.
Yeah, but that's how you like to work. And then I guess through that, you're probably more likely to create your own personal style, because you're sort of, it's a bit of free form in there, which is a good thing, because that's how you like to work.
Yeah, and I think that not getting too hung up on the technical parts of it is really helpful for me, because it lets me let myself off the hook from being a designer and a technician, and instead I get to focus on the bits that really excite me, which is ideas behind it. And like, I'm still going to do some of the black sheep oddballs things. I love just the idea of a print and then one little thing. Everything could be looking like it's mirror imaged or replicated a few times on it, and then you'll have this one leaf that's just not the same. And it's kind of that idea of, how did that happen? And making things like that happen. I love that. And I'm working on a new series of the prints at the moment. The whole move north has got me and settling into my new environment has got me excited about it. I've fallen in love with some of the trees here. And I think it's going to be called Map to My Heart. And it's all about, coming home into nature. And also finding those super cool people who just rock your world.
Yeah, similar, like-minded people. And there'll be plenty of those types up there, I imagine. And as far as the actual, you've mentioned eucalyptus, but what other trees and leaves do you like to use, and do they respond differently to the process?
Yeah, and it's interesting because in Featherston there were so many oak trees, and that prints the shape I kind of like, but I love the colour. I'd get quite lovely purpley grey colours, and really lovely crisp clear prints. I haven't seen an oak tree since we moved, so we're about to go down to Wellington for a week and a bit, and one of my favourite trees from down there, another one I can't find up here, and that's a silver dollar tree. I put it on Facebook. Does anyone have a silver dollar tree? I'm trying to order them from local nurseries. I'm going to go and source some pop into Featherston with my secateurs in a bag, and raid my favourite trees there and bring it back on the plane.
Good idea.
But I love here there are some amazing stands of eucalypts in Keri Keri, and I just love the canopies and the light that comes through. It's interesting because I just posted the other day, the younger me would have just been, bloody eucalypts, these trees that aren't even native and they're taking over the place. And I would have been so horrified by them in such huge number. And now I'm just, I really love them. The leaves are elegant. They give such beautiful colour. Look at the bark, and then you've got the gorgeous, once the bark sheds, the trunks are amazing and smooth and pale. It's just so gorgeous to look at. So I'm really excited about those at the moment. And I love pohutakawa and I love kapuka. Pohutakawa, the aerial roots as well, are amazing to print with. They give almost lightning bolty lengths of shapes and things.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it's quite nice that you've been sort of forced out of what you know and sort of, you have to source from a different area of New Zealand.
Yeah.
So it's kind of making you, learn about new things and experiment further.
It can be frustrating though, because the silver dollar gives a beautiful bright orange colour, and most of the leaves, they give kind of browns to greys. It's not particularly exciting, so to lose an anchor in your colour palette, that's why I'm a bit I need the silver dollars in my life.
So it's just a natural pigment that's in the different leaves. It happens to be different colours.
It's so strong, and in wool it comes out really well, and you don't even necessarily need a mordant to bring it through. It's just incredible. It's one of the amazing leaves. I think we call her I suppose people who eco-print would call the mother of eco-printing India Flint, and she's in Australia, an artist who works over there. The story has it that she discovered after, I don't know if this is an old wives' tale or if she wrote it in her book or what, but in my mind it is that after some very damp weather, she noticed that her chickens had been sitting on their eggs underneath the gum trees. And when she collected the eggs, they had leaf imprints on them. And the eggs, of course, are a protein. The shells are made of protein, and the silk and the wool are protein fibres. And so being a fibre artist, she started applying those techniques to get like the heat and the moisture to the fabrics with the leaves. And eco-printing was born.
Amazing. That's a good story.
It's a great story, isn't it? I hope that's the one she wants.
I hope it's true. Anyway, even if it's not true, it makes sense. Yeah.
Her work's amazing. Yeah, she's a lot more free and earthy than I am. I get caught up in the maths and the why and the social stuff.
So can you explain, you do make scarves, and sometimes you just make sort of lines of fabric, don't you, that can be made into dresses. I did see on your Instagram that a beautiful bride, used your fabric. Oh my God, that dress was so beautiful.
Yeah, I've done some really lovely commissions for bridal stuff. One was a bride who was marrying in Martinborough. She wanted the women in her bridal party to each have a silk robe to wear when they were preparing for the day. And so I went and collected, she was getting married at their place in Martinborough, so I went and over time collected leaves from her garden that she was getting married in and printed them all onto the fabric, so that she got, on the day she was preparing, in fabric printed with her venue. And similar for Nikki with her beautiful wedding dress. She and her mum actually came in. They were such lovely supporters, and now Dale and I have, her mum's a wonderful ceramicist.
Really?
Great help. So, that was wonderful. She wanted quite soft things for her wedding in Greytown, so I played with quite soft prints for her. I've been asked to print the bridal bouquet into a scarf, so as a keepsake as well. which is really beautiful.
Nice. That's so cool. I love that. And you make the fabric and then just pass them the fabric and then they got it made.
For the robes, I did all of it. But for the dress, I recommended a friend of mine who is an amazing pattern cutter seamstress who would have had a much better setup for what she wanted and would have done it so much quicker than me. So I kept the fun bit for me and passed on the fun bit for her. So
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
beautiful collaboration. Yeah.
That's a beautiful collaboration. I love that. And it's just such a meaningful process for the bride to have something made out of, where she actually got married. I just think that is really stunning. And you title your scarves, don't you? Or is it different batches?
Sometimes I title the batch. Sometimes the scarves, for a while I was giving them titles. I think that's where my tally chart started really coming from. I would just call them after where I got the leaves. So the coordinates, geographical coordinates, the pin on maps.
Yeah.
Where I got the leaves, and sometimes they were just favoured areas for me. So I'd do that. Yeah, I'd also at one point I was printing from the gardens of Wharakoho estate, and they have my scarves in their gift shop that were printed with the leaves from their garden.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I get some fun jobs like that. It's wonderful.
Do you have places that you actually have to stock, or, how do you go about getting your work out there and selling it as well?
Yeah, I had a good setup really for a while in Featherston and was supplying locally quite nicely and was really supported by the community down there and in South Wairarapa. But since my fashion stuff, the design stuff kind of came to a bit of an abrupt end during COVID, I had to start thinking about how to keep working smarter and in a new way. And instead of focusing on my shop because no one was moving, that's when I started shopping my things around to other outlets to get them to sell. And I found that my scarves were best aligned with really gallery work. So Aotearoa Museum have my stuff there. And I started really doing more commission-based pieces. So I'll print and do things. But since we've moved, it's interesting, since we're in flux, I've let that settle a little bit. And I think I started really looking down on the work. I had to move going back. I had to move from making garments, which if I'm making everything, in order to sell a lot, you have to create quite a range of sizes and shapes and things, and then hope that you sell a few of those and you end up with a lot that you have to sale off at the end. And so instead of doing that, it became a practicality that scarves fit everyone.
Yeah.
You can put it on your wall if you want. Everyone can wear them. They're great. It's like a handbag or something like that. So
yeah, and you can wear them in different ways as well, like you say, on the wall if you wanted to, or it could be over a curtain rail, over a window, or it could be round your waist, or round your head.
And I do some really big square ones sometimes, and they make really great tops if you know how to tie them right.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah, so I started honing in on one option that I split into. I chose my favorite fabrics that print beautifully. I'd done so much research by then that I knew exactly what I wanted to print, knew the sizes that I wanted to do, and just narrowed it down and to make it really manageable, that I could make it, I could work on selling it, and I could find outlets or sell it myself. And so I make my own scarves. I ordered the fabric and made them. I hemmed them because I'm very fussy.
Yeah. And what is your favorite fabric to use?
I love silk satin georgette and a wool silk voile, and I also do a range of climate change scarves, I love those ones. I've had to mend all of those ones. They were my supplier. She was amazing, a lady called Marion. She had beautiful silks just out of Melbourne. She's very ethical, and she found that some of the suppliers, they had been hit by unseasonal monsoon weather, and their scarf stock that they just made was damaged by the floods. And then as an added bonus, they tried sometimes cleaning them and ended up cleaning them on rocks and scouring holes into the scarves. And so you ended up with these damaged, dirty, holey scarves. And so she went in and bought a whole heap of them, kept buying them in, and sold them on to her customers. And so I'd buy these lots of damaged scarves and mend them and cut them down into different sizes if they couldn't be mended, and printing them and selling those on as well.
That's great.
So I love those. Those are generally silk wool ones that I've got as well, which I love. They're gorgeous.
And is that type of fabric the best for the process, or is it just that you love the feel?
They are both. I love natural fibers, but silk and wool, they have such great properties. They are really beautiful insulators. So this, particularly silk, it'll keep you cool in summer, warm in winter. Wool's very similar. And being protein fibers, they print really well. Protein and cellulose from the leaves, they attract each other really well. So they quite easily produce a colour fast result. Whereas if you're trying to imprint cellulose, the leaves, onto a cellulose fibre like cotton or linen, there's a lot more processing that you have to do. And so it's not as much fun for me.
Well, it sounds such a beautiful process. And the final result, they're very beautiful to look at, but they also have so much more. Like you're offering so much more to the wearer, just either connecting with place or connecting with nature or connecting with, eco sustainable kind of concepts, which is important for a lot of people. So it's a lovely sort of holistic process, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's how I really connect to my environment is the part that I think of my practice that really calms me and makes me feel like I fit, it brings me back to fitting into the greater world. It's interesting when I collect the leaves and everything. I think some people might say, you should learn a karakia and do it according to certain rules, but I find that you naturally do that. You go out into nature, and I'll observe for a little while. I'll go to the trees that I really like, and I'll be looking for something in particular maybe, and I'll look at the leaves, look at the trees, go, what is calling to me today? What are you going to allow me to take? Is this going to work? And I'll just start kind of talking to the trees around me. I look like a complete weirdo when I'm out there. Talk to my trees, get so excited even about windfall leaves on the ground. They're just beautiful. I just love picking them up. They're great. But the best ones I find are from the tree. And when you spend enough time with them, sometimes I just find that all of a sudden the branch of a tree will kind of come down, the wind will push it down to you, and it'll have exactly what you're looking for. And
really,
thank you so much for pointing that out to me, may I? And chop it off, and it becomes a real connection with the world, and it's really lovely. It's really anchoring.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a beautiful part of the process. It's really, really special. And do you, just finally, very quickly, do you draw up designs and that kind of thing, or do you just kind of arrange and see what happens?
With the scarves, I'll often source lots of reference images. For a while, I was really into Art Nouveau type stuff and Baroque embroidery, and I'll just bring a bunch of images up and look at the symmetry and then look at my leaves, and I'll kind of see that as sketching straight onto the scarves, because I'm limited with the size of my pot and how I have to fold them and things like that. So I will have an idea or a concept and maybe have reference images, or I'll just go with a concept that I want to show this idea and play with how do I show this idea. And I'll sketch onto the scarves, because if I screw up, I can turn the scarves into something that I'm sewing on, or I can reprint it. So, or I can pop it in a dye pot. There's lots I can do. Yeah, sometimes I'll lay it all out and then I'll just place the leaves with no mordant, nothing like that, and just have a look at how it's all going to look and imagine it, and then kind of, okay, and then I'll mordant each leaf one by one and then put them back down where I had them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll plan it out sometimes if I'm doing something quite, like the ones on my website, some of those are very mirror imagey and quite, they're very geometric. So I did it that way.
That's your maths. That's your maths coming through. And are you actually are you measuring, or are you just using your eye?
Sometimes I will have points measured on my table below, so I'll just put bits of tape where halfway is going to be and where the ends of the scarves are going to be, and I'll put almost a grid of masking tape under my work. So
that's a good idea.
Get a little bit, I'll get a little bit mathy with it.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, using masking tape. Where can you see this range going? I feel like there is so much potential on sort of different scale, or, could it become something that is more, designed specifically for a gallery as an artwork, or, what ideas have you got for this part of your practice?
I had my core range of scarves, which for the climate change, the georgette and the silk wool, which I made all of the scarves myself. I'd buy in the fabric by like 10, 20 meter lots, and then cut it and make them. But now that I'm doing more with the vends and the landscape pieces and sewing, I don't have so much time, and it just means I'm spread a bit thin. So I'm in the middle of testing different scarves already brought in, and it also means that once you add commissions on and things like that and retail markups, I can offer a different price point rather than be charging at a fair hourly rate for me to be making the scarves. I've got plenty of those scarves to offer as my premium ones.
Yeah.
Which I love the most still, and I think I always will. But I'm also having a great time playing with ready-made scarves, and
that's a good idea.
I'll be hopefully finding places and galleries and shops for those soon.
Yeah, and I wonder. I mean, there is the Keri Keri market on Sundays, which is quite a good market, but whether that's your market, I don't know, because I guess you have to charge a bit more than your average scarf.
Yeah, and especially once you have something in a gallery, there's that element of I can't charge a different price anymore.
True.
I've got to include the commission, right? So I am aware that I'd rather be selling them through. I'm planning actually, I think, to start up my website again as a selling platform where it wasn't for a while. Just because I went through a phase of I didn't really feel like my scarves were enough, and it wasn't, I wasn't being an artist properly.
Really?
So so I had a bit of.
What made you think that?
Like, I loved them, but it was that letting go of feeling like something that you wear is only fashion, because it's still the part of me that harks back to fashion and clothing. I had to cut that tie and allow myself to think of them as art. Whereas I'd always kind of go, it's just clothes. And clothes can be art, but in my mind it has to be a practicality. It has to be, but now it's like, no, it can just be beautiful and bring joy.
Yeah. You don't necessarily have to classify it, I suppose.
No. And I think that a little crisis of confidence came through with that when I started the practice of sewing the pieces to be framed for wall, for just as art, just for the sake of looking at it. And I went, oh, well, this is art, so the other can't be. And it took me a while to reconcile that it's all art. It's fine. Yeah. The process, the thought, everything behind it, it's still art.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. I guess there's that sort of that whole craft versus art kind of
Yeah.
thing, which permeates lots of artists' minds,
Mm,
and can sort of influence the buyer too if they think it's. Some people look down on the craft side more than the art side, and there's that
yeah.
whole thing to navigate in some ways. But I think
Mm,
what you're doing and the way you're thinking of it is great.
yeah. I think you're right with the craft versus art thing. Is I just thinking about it today that I was really lucky in that as much as my immediate family is not visual arty, then they were more academic music, just get ahead, get a job, be a bit more practical with the world. But my grandmother was a lovely artist. She painted in oils, had gone to Elam at one point. She did illustration for newspapers or something. She was amazing, but she never exhibited because she was a bit shy. But I think also there was an element of the it feels like there was an element of her being a mum first and doing the woman's work and in the home. And so the art became a bit of like it wasn't important, whereas it was her soul. It was
Mm.
really important to her. And I also grew up with, because of her, um, I grew up kind of in the periphery of, there was a lovely fibre artist in West Auckland called Zena Abbott, and my dad would go and visit Zena and Colin, and Zena would set me up with she knew I was really tactile, so she'd give me her spinning wheel in the corner with a bit of wool and teach me to spin or something, and she had these amazing giant looms, but we never, like, it was never taken seriously that she's actually an artist of some good, high
Mm.
reputation. I was like, but
Yeah.
she was, and yeah, but I think there was always that conflict of attitudes of, because it's practical, it can't be art, and it totally is.
Yeah. And sometimes also because it's seen as women's work,
Yeah.
it wasn't taken seriously. But that is changing, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we're in a great time for fiber art. My theory about it is that because of AI and so much being replicated easily, people want to see the textures now, and they want to see that things have been touched by human hands. And fibers are great for that. AI is not,
Yeah.
hopefully, touch wood, not going to make those in a hurry.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And so going on to your changing landscapes part of your practice, which
Mm.
I also love, can you tell us about what those works look like and what the process is for them?
I call them stitched collages. The changing landscapes in my Venivas stitched collages, and they're very heavily influenced um, by quilting techniques and quilt and applique methods. But I take away the practicality of it and strip it back to only the bits I need for art. So I will start off by cutting out shapes. Often they are contours of hills, and I'll layer them up and essentially stick them down on my base fabric. And then I just stitch into them obsessively with row upon row upon row of coloured stitches. And I'll be playing with, oh, what does this colour do over here on this fabric? And what does it do over here on this other fabric? And oh, that's a cool contrast. I need this colour now. And it becomes a playground once I move away from, once the intimidation of, oh, now I've got this beautifully laid out collage. Now I have to wreck it with the sewing. And it, there's a real fear of wrecking it because you don't want to be unpicking all day. And also a lot of it's silk that I'm sewing into. And so once you've punctured that, it's going to ruin it.
Yeah.
Venivas is all about intersecting circles. And I think my two big motifs that run through things, either on both or on one or other, is repetition of line, playing with different colors, tally charts and coding, just simple codes. I also love Roman numerals, so I'll play with numbers, but I've got an alphabet written out of my tallies, but it's not, 26 isn't Z, I'm not going to do.
Yeah.
So I've made a code for myself so I can write words and things in my pieces. And also scratchy, swirly circles. So sometimes I'll repeat the circles, repeat around a circle shape a bit to make it look a bit messy. And that kind of, I was also, when I did a bit of tattooing for a tiny while there, and that was starting to creep in as a motif for pretty much all of my tattoo designs, was swirly circles everywhere.
Really? Oh, I love
So now
that.
it's come into fabric.
I love circles. It's such a beautiful practice that you've created. It seems so original and so, very sort of unique to you. But it's such a gorgeous way of basically drawing, isn't it? It's almost like you're drawing with the thread.
Oh, yeah. An easy way to think about it. Sorry, let's go back to easy ways to think about it. The collage of the fabrics, you could liken that to broad strokes of paint on a canvas. And then if you want to go over that with thin pen lines or coloured pencil lines over the top of those swathes, the collage is my painting. And then when I get to my sewing machine, it's like playing with coloured pencil in obsessive, repetitive ways.
Yeah. And it's, again, very mathematical. It's also very sort of the land, or the changing landscapes, obviously. It's the whole, as you were saying, the contour lines. It almost feels like, mapping and or sort of diagrams, or the Venn diagrams. So it's really coming back to a maths again, as you said.
Yeah.
But in a really sort of different way. Are you thinking of the Venn diagram, or the Venn of Us series? Are you thinking of that like a Venn diagram in maths, that it's kind of combining and meeting in the middle? And what are your ideas behind that work?
For me, the Venns, it's all about the commonalities and differences that we have. So it's about us meeting other people in the world and what we show each other, what we choose to hide from each other. We might have these aspects or elements to our personality that we don't show readily, or some people we will show, and we'll find that we have that in common. So there'll be an intersection. Generally, with the pieces, there might only be one or two overlaps, and there's a lot either scratched and hidden somewhat, or there'll be a bold part that's there to see, but you don't share it entirely, or you don't have that in common, but you can appreciate it. So it's about the aspects of each other that we choose to show and feel safe showing, and finding, I suppose, comfort in each other. But also a couple of them are about when there is a lack of commonality, or not so much a lack of that, but more a discomfort in it. Because sometimes, you are uncomfortable in what you're showing, or in the world around you with how you present. It can be, okay, I'm here, but now my world and those things that make me comfortable have just shifted or moved somewhere else. So my environment's a bit scarier, and it's more about how we feel. So, but ironically, when I'm doing those pieces, because the lines are so straight and repetitive, and it's generally one color for a while, I find those so relaxing to do, and I can just let myself off my hook of being in my head. I just get out of my head while I'm doing them and just enjoy it. And then afterwards I'll come back to, oh yeah, you're about this.
So you feel like you're expressing quite a bit of your own emotion through these works?
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot, I think. And also observations about people and how we turn up for each other. Because I studied psychology before we opened our tattoo studio. And I loved studying memory, childhood development, and I suppose happiness psychology. So elements of those come out as well in it, and how we see each other, and how sometimes showing up fully can put us in more vulnerable positions. And but sometimes you kind of just have to do it to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that whole sort of therapeutic mark making
Mm.
is, even though you're using a sewing machine, I can imagine it's very similar. And that
Yeah.
sort of repetitive process is, yeah,
Mm.
quite
And
cathartic.
slowing down, it's quite nice to be slowing down, and because there's only so fast your machine will work. And sometimes if you go too fast, you're just going to make a mess, like drawing.
Yeah.
There's got to be some kind of intention to it. And yeah.
Mm. And how do you like your viewers to respond? Are you giving them any clues to what you were thinking, or are you interested in them sort of responding in their own way?
Um, I give a small uh, description of it. But I'm happy if people don't look at the description. I really love the idea that people see them differently. Because for me, it's about this thing or an idea of how we relate, and that's cool. But the joy of it is that it's about people and how we see each other and show up for each other. So I love that people can pick one up and turn it up completely. It's upside down for me, but it's, I love it this way. Cool. Put it that way. Same with the my landscapes. Someone picked up one of my landscapes and put it completely, like turned it 90 degrees. And someone else went, oh my gosh, that looks so much like eyes. And they see, leaves and eyes and mountains. I'm thinking, yeah, I suppose that's all the things that I kind of, you know, intentionally and unintentionally created those because that's what I see.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it started out as a landscape, but it is those really emerging of the three ideas. So I love
Mm.
it if people put things upside down. And I think that's why I purposefully write in sticks, because if you put it upside down, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, true.
You're not all of a sudden looking at a word written upside down.
Yeah, that's so good. And then your titles are giving clues too in a way, but not a very
Mm.
obvious clue. I love the way you've kind of got your titles really sort of fit with your different series, and they're quite sort of specific, and it's like you've
Mm.
decided on the kind of titles you're going to use for that particular series. So the Venn diagram, the Venn of us works are mostly just one word, aren't they? Like we
Mm.
or belong. So
Yeah,
how do you come up with the
without.
titles?
It's interesting because I'll be working on them, and then I'll be sometimes the idea of a color palette. I'll be playing around with that, and then the color palette makes me work with a different shape or something. And it's because of the color palette that's driving this shape, because the color palette makes me feel a certain way. They all come together, and I'll be sometimes when I very first essentially stick down my basic idea or put the basic idea there, I know exactly what it's about. And I'm like, yeah, that is this. And I'm going to do this idea, and that's what this is about. Like, oh gosh, what's my red one? Beside, I think. Um, there's two of them, two red ones. And I love that one because it's actually got a central on the side of both of them is a shared shape that continues right across. And so it's about two people beside each other in joy, and just how they completely rock each other's worlds. So it's like, me and Mario, and
Mm.
it's about love, really. And I knew exactly what that was going to be about. And I've just finished a big one, my first quite large one. And I was looking, and I had to look at it afterwards and go, oh, I know what you are. Oh, yeah. Aha. And then that's led to, I haven't finished it yet with my code. I've got to stitch that in yet. And it's a whole phrase it's really, it's got two words. It's the giver or giver, it could be. And it's about how some people give, and they can give and give and give. And sometimes they just give to takers. But it's the act of giving that's just fills their souls. So it doesn't matter that things are being taken, they're still growing.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Oh, it feels
Mm.
like your entire practice is really very mindful
Yeah, yeah.
in the process and in the result.
Yeah, it's yeah, I love it. It anchors me, and I think my beautiful partner, he was so wise sending me to the workshop years ago, because those the stitched collages only came out really as a response to, I joined the Greytown Gallery and the Greytown Artisan Group a couple of years ago. I'm one of their founding members. And I managed to blag my way in there with my scarves. And I thought, gosh, and I got in there and I'm like, oh gosh, all of these artists are amazing. Oh gosh, what do we do? And I have to earn this now. I really have to earn this, and I have to work my ass off. And the first exhibition threw a spanner in my way of thinking, because it was like, I think it was a circle. And I'm going, scarves aren't circles. How am I going to do this? And so all of a sudden I had to think of things that drape and you wear into putting something on a wall or on a tray, and it really challenged me to think outside of my existing ways of creating and moving to a different area that just made me really excited to work. And it was really through a few of the briefs in a row that threw spanners in my work in the way I think, that really helped me develop a completely new language of art for myself.
Yeah, which I think is great. And then it sort of gives you different channels to go down kind of thing, and different opportunities with the different types of works. Do you feel like your stitched works are kind of feeling more, or making you feel more like the artist that you are, more so than the scarves, and that's helping you to kind of get your head around the fact that yes, your scarves are part of your practice and part of you as an artist?
I started thinking about my scarves quite differently, creating pieces of art for a wall. I was really thinking intentionally about an idea that I'm trying to communicate. And with the scarves, I've never really had to think about that. And then it was through Greytown Gallery and the amazing artists. I love them. They're just the most incredibly supportive, encouraging people. Through bouncing ideas off them and being surrounded by them and learning actively from them, I managed to start thinking about what I was printing onto my scarves as concepts as well. And so now how I think about them, it isn't just, oh, here's some pretty leaves. I'm going to make this thing that looks beautiful, and these are the colors, and this is, now it's kind of, I know the color palette. I've done that part of my learning. I know what the leaves do. I know what this does. If I need to learn something else, I will. But how can I use what I know here to communicate this idea that will resonate with someone, I hope. And so that's where the idea of the last two, the oddballs and black sheep, and even the places, I started really naming them with intention.
And I love that you've, pushed yourself through the artist community you're a part of. It's kind of pushed your practice into another area, which is really informing your original series. And now they seem to really work so beautifully together, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you spend most days during the week working on your art practice?
Yeah. Yeah. At the moment, I'm trying to do the admin behind it. And this year, I have been planning, I feel perpetually behind at the moment, because I had optimistically thought that this year I'd just be creating these new bodies of work and working larger and practicing larger. And it's only been the last month that I've been able to do that, because I've decided to work on a rebrand, redo my website, be really intentional about how I'm presenting myself, get the business cards. I have to find, new galleries and things now that I've moved to a new area, and be more business minded about it. So a lot of it is the admin, and how can I think about it as, rather than just get stuck in the art, also learn the business of it. And I'm at the moment working on prints and how that would work for me. And I've really been reluctant about printing my fabric pieces, because then it's no longer a fabric piece. And how do I reconcile that? And I've figured it out. So I'm excited to start putting those out there.
Yeah, I
But
think that would be beautiful. And you still really get a
mm,
feel for the texture, I imagine, through good printing, good reproduction.
yeah, but I'm actually, yeah, planning to always have something stitched on my work, I think,
Mm,
or some element of, yeah,
yeah,
the tactile that you could reach out and see the difference or feel it.
that's a
Yeah.
great idea. And even maybe
Mm.
your tally charts or your coding could be something
Mm.
that's done by hand on top.
Yeah. And even changing it up so that every print is an original that I am printing. I could not change the word, but change where it is, maybe change it
Mm,
slightly, be a bit
yeah.
cheeky. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And then you can play
Mm.
with scale. I mean, you could get it blown up to
Yeah.
A1 or A0, which would be really striking.
Mm. Yeah, it'd be interesting for a small piece to be like that.
Yeah.
It's a bit intimidating because I think when you look at your own work, you're always going to nitpick. And then
Mm.
to have it gigantic in front of you, it's a bit like hearing your own voice on the answer phone.
Or on a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Early in my printing journey, I went over to visit Marion at Beautiful Silks, and I did a natural dyeing workshop, and I was actually really lucky to do that with her. Um, I was actually a little bit fragile and unwell at the time that I was there, and she was so incredibly amazing. I was staying on the property doing the printing, the dyeing, and she's given me some beautiful pieces of advice. She's been a lovely mentor to me. And one of them that was really recent is because I was feeling just so overwhelmed and like I couldn't get back into my art, and like I should be, that whole should be doing it, and I'm just not. And I've got this studio now removed so I can do it, and I'm not, and I'm failing at everything. And she just said, rest. You need to rest because it's one part of the cycle of three. Rest, inspiration, perspiration, repeat. Rest, inspiration, perspiration. And I just kind of went, and leaned into resting and just went, I'm not going to do any art. And within 2 weeks, I was so amped to get into my studio, and I haven't been able to stop since.
That is so good. That's such good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, she was amazing. And also, the other thing that she told me is when I started out doing the visual pieces and I posted something, one of my pieces, and I thought I'd finished. And she said, I think it was India Flint told her that you've just got to keep going until it's beautiful. Just keep going. And I was just, oh, okay, I'll keep going then, and carried on working into it where I thought I'd finished. But I think I've just got to that point where I was scared of mucking it up.
Yeah.
And I just had to get past it. And so she's given some beautiful pieces of advice.
That's so good. And that resting and just allowing for a little bit of headspace is
Yeah.
so important. And being an artist is work. And
Mm.
sometimes you need a rest from work.
I don't know. I'm still very new to being an artist and the art world. But from listening to artists that you talk to, I get the feeling that oftentimes we feel like because the work is thoughtful or slow, or you need to gather yourself to do some parts, or just take a break and get perspective and give it some distance before you go back into it, or just do something else for a while you're pondering. I think we don't see that as being useful, but those are really useful parts of the process.
Mm.
And
And
you
then
need
often,
to include them.
yeah.
That it's
And once you've
actually art.
exactly, and once you've done that, you're often more productive, or things go
Yeah.
better anyway because you've allowed yourself that space. Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
that's my leaving the compound in the morning. I go out all full of gusto, and by the time I come home, I'm like, okay, now I'm settled. Now I am slow enough to do this.
Yeah, you're
Got rid of
ready.
some energy.
So good. And you are in Keri Keri, as we said, and you have
Yes.
recently joined Little Black Gallery, which is
I,
amazing.
I'm so excited. I was really thrilled. I'd been not quite cyber stalking, but I'd been following her quite closely. on social media before the move up, and went and met with Anna and showed her my work. And she's got some of my work in the gallery now. So that's really lovely. And she was so enthusiastic and wonderful. So
that's great.
Yeah, I feel like I'm finding home.
Yeah, and you'll find your artist community here through that connection, probably.
Yeah. Before I saw her about my work in the gallery, she encouraged me to enter Coast, which is the art trail up here over Labour weekend. And so I joined that, and I'll be having an open studio at our house. In my studio, kind of, in Mario's studio, which is easier to get into. So she encouraged me to do that. And through the planning process of doing that, like just some of the admin that you do in the background, I've met some wonderful artists around here. Such a cool bunch of people, really. Again, so open and friendly, and just so happy to include new people.
Really welcoming. That's so good.
Incredibly
Fantastic.
welcoming.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. It's a great art trail, that one. I've done that a few times. It's lovely. Unfortunately, I'm just going to miss it this year. Won't quite be home. Anyway, let's get on to the questions. I think we've had a really lovely chat about your practice and all the sort of beautiful elements of it. Can you think about, or can you tell us what advice you might have given to your younger artistic self?
Just everyone's as vulnerable as you are, and everyone's feeling it. We're all in the same boat. So don't be too intimidated, I think. Yeah, approach it with joy and humor.
Yeah, and an open mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. And what was one of the most pivotal moments of your becoming an artist?
There have been a few. They're all around people just including me before I even realised that I was one of them, which was really lovely. When we moved to Featherston, I think that's probably the big move, was starting Perpetua Studio in Featherston. And all of a sudden, this art community just opened their arms to me, and it was amazing. And I didn't even... they were so welcoming and friendly, and I was just like, I'm not one of you guys, but thank you. This is really lovely. It's such an incredible compliment, but I don't know what you're seeing. And I think I've been really lucky that that's all, that the doors have just opened, or maybe I've just noticed that they've opened, which is another thing, a different way of looking at it. So it's just the people along the way who have just welcomed and beckoned me through.
What do you find most challenging about your life as an artist?
The most challenging, I suppose, is really figuring out how my practice works for me, how I work within it, and letting myself off the hook a little bit, that I don't have to be working 100 miles an hour all the time. I can be considering and contemplating, and often that will make things better.
Yeah.
And just, gung-ho into it. Although there's a certain joy when you're absolutely in the mix, people talk about the flow state, but in that, and just churning through a bunch of things without even realising it.
Well, it's been lovely to meet you, Caera, and I am very excited to see what you managed to achieve up in the far north, which is such a fantastic place to be working. And I feel like, the two of you have found your place for the moment. And it's been so interesting hearing about your practice. Thank you so much for being on Creative Connections.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for having Creative Connections, because I can't, I've told you before how much I'm learning from listening to other artists, and how incredibly valuable this is to the broader community. Thank you.